All right, so the intention of this video is to talk through center face contact, hitting the ball solidly. You know, one of the things that you learn as a golfer is just how to get the geometry and the physics, and it's not like high level geometry or high level physics, but if you can get the geometry and the physics pretty good, well, then you can start to get that golf ball jumping off the club face with what feels like not a lot of effort. I think that's what the great players of all time did. When we look at modeling players, we look at players that were able to play at a world-class level for a really long time. So that means these players were efficient and they could last. Where modern players, in the golf game going more in the ego direction, players are getting injured maybe at younger ages than players from the past. So there's a balancing act between speed and control, and there's a balancing act within the game of golf. We don't want to get to this, we don't want to get to that. We want to look for where the middle way is. To use the example of, lifting weights, if I was trying to do bench press every day for X amount of reps, for X amount of days, for X amount of weeks, for X amount of months, years, decades, and I have joints in the wrong spot, then something's going to give at a certain point in time. So when we talk about getting our sort of first principles or our home base sort of alignments pretty dialed in, we talk about GPS, grip posture setup. And if you look at the world number one right now, Scotty Scheffler, he's always working from the same sort of baseline principles, so that he can maybe get into changing shapes and trajectories from there. But who would have thought 10 years ago that you would see the world number one with a grip trainer on his golf club? If I want to get my body communicating to this mass on the end of this fulcrum well, I probably need to get my grip decent. There's wiggle room, but I want to get to where the more important things are right and my hands are stable, because I don't want this club face wiggling around, and I want my hands to feel stable. And if my grip pressure is good, I'm able to handle more club head speed and create more club head speed. But my wrists are mobile. Those are mobility joints. So I would never want to hold the club loose in my hands with tight wrists. I would want to make sure that my hands are nice and firm, but my wrists feel kind of loosened up. Then my elbows, they're stability joints, but my shoulders are mobility joints, and my scapula are stability. So we don't want to ever get loose feeling in a stable joint. We don't ever want to get too tight feeling in a mobility joint. We want to make sure that all these joints are communicating well with the weight of the club. So one of the things that I have players do is just grip the club in front of you like this, stick the club in your belly button, and then poke it back out. With the face straight up and down, or the face square, if I can stick the club in my belly button and poke it back out, and the club face doesn't change when I do that, well then I know, okay, my joints are communicating well. And if you talk to a calisthenics guy about, doing pull-ups, they're going to tell you that their glutes are part of their grip. Their core is part of their grip. Their feet are part of their grip. The whole body is gripping the weight as a tensegral unit so that I can get every joint in my body communicating and transferring energy out to the club head into the back of the ball. Now, if I had my hands turned over here more when the face is square and then I neutralize my joints, well now look, it's closed. So now I'm going to need to make some compensations. Or if I had my hands over here more, in golf terms, weak when the face is square, and then I neutralize my joints. Now the face is open. So one of the simple things I have guys do is just grip the club in front of you, kind of almost feeling this sort of equal opposite pressure. I've got the club feeling like it's in the base of my fingers. I stick the club in my belly button. I poke it back out. Club face doesn't change. Okay, check. We've got the face in a good spot. We don't want this club face wiggling around. We don't want this shaft plane wobbling around. And then we're looking at the details as we refine things down to a wrinkle. So if you've ever heard of the 3 W's, wiggles, wobbles, wrinkles. If I want to be really efficient, like Scotty Scheffler, maybe like Jack Nicklaus, if I get this thing gripped pretty good, and then I know how to elongate my spine, kind of unlock my knees and drop down, then I get my posture pretty good and I get my setup pretty good, well then I just got to throw this thing up over my right shoulder and kind of throw it back down in front of me. And then that becomes sort of my authentic plane to my swing. And then when you look at, okay, What are the important things to get right from my arms perspective? Well, what would we say the lead arm's role is? What would we say the trail arm's role is? I would say the trail arm's role is going to be sort of our throwing mechanics. We would definitely say that this is a throwing sport, and the human, body is meant to throw. So throwing mechanics is a big part of my trail arm. And then this arm's going to be, responsible for my plane. If this elbow backs out more, that might get steeper. If this elbow points down more, that might get shallower. What's in between steep and shallow? Well, on plane. So this is going to be my plane mechanics and kind of my throwing mechanics. And then this arm is going to sustain the radius of my swing. And when I talk about the radius of my swing, in this case, I'm talking about the distance from the butt of the club to my sternum. This is why the pressure points in the grip become really, really important. And I'll talk about 3 of them. We talk about these 3 fingers being really important: the pinky, the ring finger, and the middle finger. We don't want to get those fingers feeling too loose up here at the top of our swing. And these fingers being strong is important because a lot of the speed is coming from back in here. And these fingers are going to relate more to my posterior chain. If you squeeze your pinky really hard, you might feel it in your tricep. You might feel it in your rear delt. So the ability to pull the butt of the club up and in and get a lot of energy transferred out to the club head, that's really responsible for, or the responsibility of that is really coming from kind of my lead lat, and it even crosses over to my right glute. So there's sort of this maybe X factor stuff going on in the golf swing. Another important pressure point in the grip is my trigger finger. So the right index finger is crucial because as I come down and my hand speed slows down and my club head speeds up, I want to keep that trigger finger able to be pressurized against the grip so that I can keep the face really stable through the strike and keep the face from, wiggling around. I want to make sure that the rate of closure is under control, and I want to make sure that the overtaking rate is under control. So that trigger finger is also really important. But then a key, pressure point in the grip relating to center face contact is this pressure point right here, where my right palm is sort of pressurized against my left thumb. I don't want to be able to see my left thumb when I grip the club like this. I want to feel almost this equal opposite type pressure in my hands. I want to feel some spacing in my elbows, and I want to feel like I'm connecting to the sword or to the weight in a centered and balanced way. What happens in the swing, my trail arm starts about 5 to maybe 10 degrees bent, and then it's going up to 90 degrees bent. My left arm is kind of softened up. My left elbow is not ramrod straight. My left arm has a little bit of softness to it. But as I'm bending my right arm, I'm always pushing against my left thumb. So it's actually my right arm that straightens out my left arm. So I wouldn't want to just bend my right arm and then keep bending it and not put pressure against my left thumb. Now look, my left arm's bent too, and I've overbent my right arm. So bending, to do a bicep curl, my bicep bends my arm, my tricep straightens my arm. As I'm going to the top of my backswing, I'm bending my right elbow. It's going from 5 degrees, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's gradually bending to 90 degrees, and I'm gradually abducting my humerus, and I'm gradually retracting my scapula. So I'm gradually loading my right arm, but as I'm gradually loading my right arm, I'm always pushing against my left thumb. So then if I have this sort of yin-yang experience going on with my right and left arm, that keeps the distance from the butt of the club to my sternum the same. And then if all I have to think about is bicep, tricep, that's all I got to think about, bending, straightening, then it gets really easy to return the golf club back to the same spot again and again and again and again. Now there's obviously more going on than that, but for a simple sort of swing thought, if we're thinking about flexion extension of this arm, my right arm starts about 5 to 10 degrees bent, it goes up to about 90 degrees bent, and then at impact it'll be around 5 to 10 degrees bent again. So that's my throwing mechanics, that's my playing. The lead arm sustains the radius.